Hi everyone, this is Tom, and this week's character is Patrin Sala for Marlin. Patrin is a 51-year-old male silver dragonborn cleric. He was a blast to do. This was for the Halloween-themed, the special Halloween draw for the free character art lottery. This is for monstrous characters, evil things, spooky things, Halloween, basically. And in the case of this dragonborn, he's actually a a zombified one, which was extremely exciting to draw. And I was really excited when I read that part, and it allowed me to have a lot of fun with the character, especially when it comes to anatomy. That's one of my favorite things about monsters and creatures, and particularly zombie things or corpse-based things like ghouls and whatever you can think of. Is because then a lot of the anatomy sort of shows through. It plays a more important part because you want to see bones, you want to see fibers and sinews and bits of decay and texture. So it really puts a lot of extra usage on the anatomical stuff, which I like doing this. This is a lot of fun, especially on creatures, and it's great practice, and it helps me keep trying to remember all this anatomy stuff. But yeah, it's fun to finally show it off, and in sort of a more in-depth way. I mean, you'll have buff characters and lean characters and what have you that aren't wearing a shirt or don't have sleeves on or whatever. But to actually have bones and muscle show through, it doesn't happen too much in this character. By the end, it's mostly on his face and just sort of some gaunt hands, really. But it is always an appeal for monsters and things. So Dragonborn style. The face is a bit divergent than the type of Dragonborn you see in the player's handbook. They have big snouts and sort of dreadlock things, and some often they have big sort of fins off the side of their head and whatnot. This is based on a drawing of Patrin that I was given by Marlin. I don't know if he did it or if he had a friend do it or something, but it is built as sort of just more of like a realistic version of that. I tried to stay as faithful to it as possible. I hope the structure is there. I hope the character is there, as Marlin has been seeing a Patron this far. But yeah, it is based on that. So if you win and you have drawings already of your character, send them my way, and I'll try to incorporate that. I'll try to stay as faithful to that original vision as possible, and take what's from there, and try not to wreck everything for you. But yeah, Dragonborn style. They seem like a race that you can have a lot of fun with, a lot of interpretation. There are a lot of there's a pretty consistent look for them in the books, but I think that if you were to be working on a project that brought them into some sort of theatrical project or like television thing, that there would be some measures of interpretation that would have to take place as far as how their anatomy is resolved and what's possible. In the case of Patron, one thing I tried is I normally do feet that are like T-Rex feet as far as their structure and appearance, but this one I wanted to do something a bit more gnarly and with a bit more of like a savage silhouette, but also something that was like a lighter foot. He is more of an intellectual character, and I thought that in my mind it kind of gave him like a lighter quality. Like he'd sort of not hop around, but he'd be lighter on his feet. He'd be sort of more on the going the bird direction as far as Dragonborns and large scale reptilians go. So having a smaller foot, thinner leg, lighter footprint, that's basically that is the reason why I did that. Just kind of take the power out of a little bit of brute power from his body, add something that's a little bit more dexterous that way. With a fairer leg, it implies a bit more mobility. And flightiness, so it's those subtle things. You never know if it's going to come through, but it's those sorts of things where if you're including them, if you're thinking and trying to bend the rules in that way, it's at the very least going to result in just a bit less standard of a design, if you will, if that kind of makes sense. I don't necessarily expect people to be like, oh, this guy must be smart because he's got little feet. These things normally have big feet, and they're usually not that smart. I'm not expecting that to take place, but it does. He does have a distinct. He's clearly Dragonborn, but he does have a distinct look from standard or typical common Dragonborn. If that makes sense to you there. Yeah, so anatomy-wise, but I mean, typically you want things on a Dragonborn like a bit longer arms and broader shoulders, and you've got like the dog leg kind of shape things, kind of normal stuff. You don't want to deviate too far from what's expected. You want to add a flavor and not take away, and that is bad advice because it's extremely vague and that can mean anything. But I do think you know what I mean. It's still gotta ring true. It's still gotta match the same description as the core, as the basis. So after having a nice, loose, comfortable sketch of the armor and everything, and the outfit, blocking in larger shapes of flat color just to help tone things. You don't have to be too particular about which color you're actually using, as long as you're just cordoning off consistent and like patches of color. So things like the armor or the skin, stuff that you know is going to be in the same color range. It's going to be tied together. Keep those on one layer. Flood the whole layer and then mask it out and then put it back in that way. Then you can, whatever color you choose, as long as you just have that area sorted out, you can adjust each layer with the slider until you have a good balance of colors and they're all sort of playing together how you like. And that's one of the main reasons why I color this way. It speeds it up quite a bit, because actually picking a color is really tough. It can be, especially if you're really picky. It can be tough to find the right color, but also you can think you found the right color and it'll look really good if you try it out as like a little sample, but it'll have a different nature to it when you use it to fill another area, and it also might limit you in ways you don't like, as far as how it's going to play with other colors. And so if you keep them all separate, you can avoid that. I mean, well, you'll probably still face the problems of things clashing, but you can at least change them all on the fly. It's very non-committal. It's very it's very preservative. It's non-destructive way of picking colors. So I do that quite a bit when I do in this. But I'm also you'll notice on the color picker that I'm not using a black or a white, which is binary on-off as far as the mask goes, but some sort of gray, enough that I can still see through the patches of color onto the sketches, because I can always go darker, I can always go more opaque, and I even don't necessarily want to. It's okay if sketches show through the color, it's okay if that happens. It can even add some charm or texture or detail or that little extra bit of shadowing, and even if you get to the point where you're nearly finished and you toggle that layer on and off, sometimes it turns out that it is actually adding something to it, but that's all optional. Just play it how you feel. I think it'll all turn out okay. As far as putting in the occlusion, it's nice to start general to specific. So with this, just being sloppy, it's on its own layer, so you don't have to worry about wrecking anything beneath it, all the color and sketching that you put on. But blocking in sort of a mid-range shadow where you know everything is going to be in shadow. So he's leaning forward. He's a zombie. He's walking. He's sort of hunched over. So his legs are going to be overcast. His body's really forward, and so just putting sort of just a wash over there kind of helps model the figure. It helps give it that depth. But also setting the standard with a light medium overtone, it can help you avoid a problem that I have, is going way too dark with shadows, and that can really sort of bum things out quite a bit. So what I normally do is I'll render and render and render, and then I can things can always go a little bit darker in places, and then to make those not seem so bad, you darken the rest, and I basically fall into like a rendering black hole where things can just get super, super dark, and things that shouldn't get super dark, whether they would actually have been catching some ambient light, or they're even a material that just in that normal room lighting or whatever is just not going to get as dark. I have a habit of even taking things like a good example would be like skin, like human skin, like pale skin. That it's really easy to just render that until it's really dark brown or really black, like under a neck or in an armpit or something. When really, if you look at any photo, it's very rare lighting conditions where that's going to take place. Whereas they're also wearing like a blue shirt or a blue cape or something, and that gets rendered to about the same value, the tonal value. And it can start to really betray the materials and even just like how light and color work. You want to be able to keep an eye out on that and just go a little bit easier. And doing an overall wash can really help kind of set the tone and give things context and overall relative value. You can sort of see different parts against the size of the whole, and how that works out together, and it helps. And then just general to specific, big shapes to smaller shapes. It's okay to try things out. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to erase and try over. But that approach has really helped me a lot. Every time I feel too daunted or really intimidated to work on a part or to even do a piece, I just remember that general to specific, big to small, and that really helps kind of straighten things out. So I'm going to get into the description, the information that Marlon sent me. So this is my character is called Patrin Sala, who is a 51-year-old male silver dragonborn cleric. His stats are Strength 11, Dexterity 13, Constitution 14, Intelligence 14, Wisdom 18, and Charisma 16. So he's definitely more a thoughtful character. So Patrin Sala was a renowned alchemist in his home country of Artharen, owning a potion shop in which he spent most of his days in. Wanting to expand his inventory, Patrin took a book out of my other monitor is really far away and the text is small. Patrin took to a book about dark potions, which was given to him after the passing of his old mentor. In this book, he discovered a potion that could remove a dragon's breath for a short amount of time. However, the result was quite different. Upon testing the potion on himself, his natural resistance to ice became nullified, causing his insides to become engulfed by frostbite when attempting to use his breath weapon. A year after this event, another effect of the potion came to light. Patrin rose from the grave, his body both damaged by the frostbite and decay given by time. As far as personality goes, Patrin Sala was always considered to be a friendly seller of potions, greeting each customer as if they were his first. After the potion resurrected him, he tried to remain the same, yet his zombified exterior struggled to show it. His appearance is attached an image of him pre-zombified, or pre-zombification. You'll actually see that video pop up really quickly, closer to the front of the video. You might have noticed it. Patrin is a silver dragonborn standing at 203 centimeters. He wears fully mithril armor with a blue medium cape. On the center of his chest armor is a yellow symbol of Bahamut, dragon head in profile. He wields a warhammer that has a roaring dragon head on each end. And that's the brief that we got. So, pretty nice. Just a well-meaning, friendly guy, a little bit too curious. Blew out his own guts with the attempt to do some ice breath, and became some sort of ghoulish, zombie-ish monster creature. But still sentient. That's a neat twist to it. It's rather than being just a mindless zombie, it's still something where you've got a character that is still themselves, but they're trapped. And that adds some nice depth. I like that. I just realized my cat wrecked my speaker. So a lot of the design here, especially the bust, like from the sternum up, was built around the drawing that Marlon included. So the collar and the cape and the fabric and the breastplate and what have you, that's all based largely on that, with a couple slight variations done by me, as far as where I had seen shoulder pad was one large shape, almost like a Dragon Ball Z shoulder, or pauldron, So I added a little bit more segmentation and difference to it. It seemed it allowed for more practical movement, but also by having the shape broken into more scalish sort of shapes, it can add to that looser, more frenetic, kind of lively effect of like decay, of like a zombie sort of thing. You want to have a lot of stuff that isn't falling together so uniform, that isn't still clean anymore. I imagine his I imagine his armor probably wasn't buried with him. He wasn't probably, yeah. So it's not like rusty and stuff. I imagine mithril probably is sort of like gold in that it doesn't tarnish too much or at all. I mean, gold, yeah, doesn't, but and it was only for a year. But one thing I tried to do to kind of help show he's been a bit freeze-dried and rotten and zombie-ish is adding little cues that his armor doesn't fit so well anymore. So, I mean, a lot of it does get lost in the darkness and in the shape of the scales and things, but the scale armor around his, under his breastplate, over his ribs, you can see the shape of his rib cage and where his belt has been pulled quite tight, or the segments of armor around his bicep and tricep are pulled right together on the insides, and with the strap of the belt coming out and curling off, just to sort of show that every belt and strap is pulled as tight as it can, and even like the shoulders, they're drooping down, and they've got some scale on them. Later on, I come in and I add some tarnish and dirt, kind of rustish, even though I don't know much about the actual properties of mithril, and I haven't dealt with it too much outside of a Tolkien frame, but I figured it's at least going to be dirty. And even just for flavor, you could do something that's a bit sort of like a Don Quixote approach, where, although his armor was actually kind of worn out, and I could have done something where you have like a really decayed, gross corpse, but he's in really well kept armor, really immaculate, like it had been set aside after he had died, or it was still at the lawyer's office waiting to be dispensed in his will, or what have you. But I did want something. I had Halloween on my mind. I wanted something that was a bit gnarly and nasty, and drawing some dragon hands and a face where the bones are sort of coming through. It just didn't have that overall vibe. I wanted him to really seem. I wanted to draw a whole zombie. But I mean, these are all first draft. So if I needed to, I could go back and try out some new stuff. But it's those little cues for character that you can look out for if you're out of ideas, or if you want to sort of avoid the obvious or give something a twist. That's that kind of stuff that's going to help out. Although I don't know, it might be too much. It might be just too distinct or too inconsistent for people. They might want to see it all done up like that. So, I mean, he's going to be dirty and decayed, but I didn't take any of the scales out of his armor yet. I don't think they would be like in bad shape, so it's not like rusting to pieces or falling apart. So I didn't go too crazy. Structure of the face is built on the drawing that Marlon provided, and then as far as zombifying it up, I just wanted to have some of the I wanted the skin to seem a bit more shrink wrap to the flesh. Even something like crocodilian, where their skin on their head is actually incredibly thin, and their head is basically a skull with a coat of paint on it. And they also have, you don't want to go too fully reptile or too totally dinosaur with something like this. If you want to, actually, a lot of like dinosaurs would have a pretty neat thing, but you don't want it to look like a dinosaur too much. So when I was working on the skull here, I was trying to even think of like mammalian sort of structures, like on the zygomatic arch, which is basically the cheekbone, the outside of the cheekbone, which curves back. It forms it's just like it's almost like sunglasses that goes back towards your ear. But I gave him that, and like the orbit, the frame around the orbit where the eye socket is, it's sort of more like a bear or a lion or a dog or a cat, where it's actually open on the side, like right outside the side of the eye. It's sort of like a normal skull, but it's dissolved, and they have sort of a thing there. So there's a bit of like a structure to the face and the cheekbones, because you want to have especially with a creature with horns like that. He's going to be a predatory character, so he's going to need to be looking forward. But with a brow that big, it would sort of block out any ability for a face like that to, like if you had horns like that on a like a T-Rex skull, he'd have to turn his head sideways. Is what I'm trying to say, in order to like hunt, and that's not how predators hunt. So having something where the top of his head would be a bit broader than what like a T-Rex or a Velociraptor would. It's not. No, it's not a. Not a. What's the word? Sauropod? Is that? No, is that? Oh, that's the big one. I can't remember the term for the type of dinosaur, but you know the bipedal predatory theropod. I'm pretty sure. You want something a bit more wide across, and where you, like a lion or a bear, and so you know that he can see. It's that kind of stuff that's going to show up. I saw a 3D model for like a zombie dog skeleton for sale on a website that you could use if you were like a game developer or whatever. And you could tell they weren't even bothered to look up a dog skeleton once. They didn't even glance at it because the skull was just a human skull. Well, it was essentially just a human skull that was stretched into the vague shape of a dog skull, and it was a dead giveaway that they just didn't use reference, because once you could just notice things like that, like the orbit and the zygomatic arch and how that's differently shaped, like it's pretty distinct. That was just a neat little aside that I thought it reminded me about it. I'm very kind of picky about skulls and anatomy. I just kind of I want to make sure that things are believable and based on how actual organic structures are kind of formulated. Now the character himself does have a blue, purpley-ish, light-colored skin, and it makes sense that he might even be, like, after being a corpse, especially like a freeze-dried corpse, that he would even potentially be whiter. But I wanted to have it be dirty and zombie-ish. And even looking at, I did end up looking at corpses of people who have frozen to death. There's some on Mount Everest. They had some in Antarctica. I mean, it happens all the time. But and even looking at like freezer burned meat and how that goes, there's a lot of browning and sort of darkening and things of the materials itself. So I wanted to include that with the design. I didn't try to look too long. I didn't want to look at any. I didn't really want to look at corpses, but that is something that comes up in concept art. Usually, you can avoid looking at human corpses, in particular, if you don't want to get involved with that. Even things like meat or animals or scavenged carcasses of animals and stuff. You can get a lot of information as far as how to actually depict decay, if you want to do it. If you care about getting it as naturalistic and realistic as you can, that's an option. It's kind of one of those things where if you're doing a zombie, you'll have an edge if you do look up the terrifying ways in which a body can decay, and you could design. There's still a lot of room for unique zombie designs based on corpses out there. But really, if you don't feel like being too gross, you can just use your knowledge of muscles and bones and just use that and just do some guesswork. Just draw some bones, put some muscles on it, and then just erase some skin and some muscles, and you can pretty much do it, thankfully. I'm not too squeamish, but you know, sometimes you just don't want to. Was the Bahamut dragon head skull, head profile, just imagine just a cutout sheet of gold and then bolted on to the chest, something just simple and not too flashy. I thought it could help to make him seem a little bit more frosty if I just had this sort of lingering hoarfrost coating of just this thin white, just cold, something to imply just cold, or it's like this could even be some of like where like the blood had totally left the skin or just washed out. And it also helps add some color and lightness and draws attention to his face. It's one of those kind of happy accidents where the context of the color it serves a lot of purposes all at once. As for the Warhammer with the dragon heads, it was pretty tough trying to draw this dragon head from 2 different angles. I wanted to do something a little different with the Warhammer and have the ends of them rotated 90 degrees. I thought it would make it more interesting, and I also thought that it would imply some sort of more a little bit less of an obvious fighting style. I think it'd be something a lot more like flowy and dynamic and exciting, almost more like a some sort of like dance where it would be more like windmills, and rather than just like a simple club or a cudgel. If you had this thing twisted, it would sort of imply radial motions, almost like certain oars for kayaks and such, where they've got like a twist, or they're sort of kiltered off a little bit. I picture it like this would be a Warhammer, because it's double-sided, rather than for just simple like American Gladiator style thrashing each other, or more than just like a simple one directional hit, that it would be something that would involve a lot of circular motions and flowing onslaughts, or like one move would lead into the other and he just gets going, and by having them at different directions it could lead to that. So that I don't know if you'd really pick up on that, but that's what led to this decision to do this. And it's nice to give it a twist, and I guess that literally did give it a twist. So a pun unintended, but I'll take it. And even here at this point, just starting with one flat solid color and then rendering it this way, I can always, since the rendering is on a separate layer, I can always just go back in and change the color underneath it. And the only thing that, if you hadn't been thinking of it before, the only thing you would need to adjust on the rendering layer, the occlusion, is just the way in which the light behaves on the material. If it's not distinct enough, as far as that goes. So it actually is a pretty nice setup. So I'm pretty sure what I'm going to do is I'm just coloring it as if it's basic metal, and then on top of that I'm going to make a new layer. Yeah, there we go. And there it is, the red layer, and it's set to a clipping layer, so then it will only affect the color of the that object, or those colors will, that the pixels on that layer will only map onto the layer directly below it. And it's a great way to change color underneath things, slip things in, without then needing to worry about redefining the border, because it's already just been done for you when you first laid out the shape. So you can even draw out a shape with a totally hard edge if you like. So here again, I imagine it would be mithril as well, this hammer. Not necessarily tarnish, but by adding a little bit of that browning inside the details, it gives it a bit more of an older, worn out thing. It's a bit messy. And as far as chips and scratches, you want them where he'd be hitting stuff most with this thing, so up in the front, around the chin and the snout of it, and then here, wanting to make things a little bit more interesting, tie them back to the magic, because if he's got this frost breath and things like that, there's some sort of you can sort of see it glowing. It also gives room for more holes in his body, more thinness to the skin, more decay, more character and detail. The blue kind of can make it seem a bit more sci-fi. Blue glowy stuff typically is more associated with sci-fi, but in this case we'll make an exception because it is frost magic. So that was Patrin Sala for Marlin, and it was a blast to do. Great character, nice and simple and to the point, but also a fresh take on an old standby, the Dragonborn and Zombie. Actually, those are pretty much two sort of standard things that it was nice to, by mixing them together, it made them fun again. I'm not really a zombie guy. I'm not too much of a Dragonborn guy, but they're fun to draw every once in a while. I am a Dragonborn guy. They are cool. But combining them together was a lot of fun. It's always great when you can have some anatomy stuff show through. I'm really excited about that. So this is for the free character art lottery. Follow me on Twitter for updates on that at R&D Fantasy. Stay tuned. It's going to be getting exciting. And this could be your character next if you want. So stay tuned, follow me there, and thanks for following me, and I really hope everything goes well for you. So thanks for watching, and I hope it helped.